Today we're going to be painting this loose and realistic hibiscus together. Welcome to Sunlit Brushstrokes. My name is Jessica, and today we'll be starting this flower with loose and flowing brushstrokes, then gradually adding layers of detail and shadow for a realistic touch. I'll guide you step by step so you can follow along while choosing the level of detail that feels right for you. If you'd like to try a quick, simple sketch, I'll show you how. But I also have a ready-to-use outline in my Etsy shop, so you can skip straight to the painting if you prefer. And then stay tuned because next week I'll be sharing part 2, where I paint these leaves and this loose, beautiful background, including the option of adding splatters if you like them. Let's go ahead and get started. So to sketch my flower, I'm going to be just using very cheap paper, like just computer paper, very inexpensive, thin paper to do my drawing. So it gives me space to mess around, make mistakes, whatever. Then when I get my drawing the way I want it, I will transfer that over to watercolor paper. That tends to be the way I usually work. Sometimes I draw right on the watercolor paper. Most of the time, I draw it out on a scrap of paper if I'm going to do a drawing. And what I want to do is start with the simplest, or maybe the most obvious part, I should say, of this flower first. And that is the stamen and this, and the stigma too, all this kind of center part. So what I'm doing is this round shape I'm drawing is kind of the whole area where all these little stamen are. Rather than draw every single one, I'm just going to show, okay, that's about where it is, and it's a little bit of an angle. So I'm going to draw that first. And then up here, we have these little 5 round circles that are going to land on top, but I'm just starting by just kind of drawing the outline of where those 5 are going to be, and then I'll draw them in. So 1, 2, 3, and they're not perfect circles. They're kind of a little bit oval. They're kind of laying elliptical on their side. There's 4 and 5, something like so. Alrighty, and then we can do this little center here, and that's going to be where we're gonna just branch everything else off of. And so we have a nice center line, and we're going to carry on this line now. Okay, of course, when we're going to paint this will be a bit thicker. But I'm going to draw a line, a very light line, running through here. And this is going to give me guidance for where my back petal will be. For each petal, I'm drawing a center line. And so this one is going to have a petal kind of like this. Like we loosely draw this one in, and then I'll show you the other ones. So actually, we don't have to get the exact, let's not even do the little ruffles at the top for now. We will add them. But let's just go ahead and loosely sketch in what the overall shape of this petal looks like. So something like this. I'm not being super precise, just trying to eyeball things, and then we'll do the details after. You can kind of get the idea of that though, right? That's about where that petal is. Then you can see it kind of just cuts off about like here, actually before there, maybe here. Again, I keep looking at the reference photo to try and help me, but I want you to realize I'm talking at the same time. And so I'll probably slop up. Okay, let's just do that. That's kind of the shape of that petal. I'm just going to, I got a kneadable eraser here. You don't have to use a kneadable eraser. It's just the one that was closest. Just erase that. Okay. So then from here, the center spot, we're going to draw out 5 more. So let's just kind of go like this. There's going to be one that comes like this, sort of, and then one that kind of comes like that. Maybe a little bit like, I don't know, like so. And then these ones kind of come to the side. I'm just, like you can see, I'm doing multiple little lines until I'm kind of happy with my placement. And this is not photorealistic, but I want to have it kind of like a loose realism style, but a simple sketch to get us going. And like I say, you can just buy the outline if you prefer not to do this. If you're short on time or you don't like sketching, there's nothing wrong with using an outline or tracing. There really is not. So what I'm going to take now is each of these lines and draw the petal around them and see, okay, I kind of see, again, let's skip the ruffles for now. Let's kind of just get the basic overall outline shape that we can see here for each of these petals. Just really loose and sketchy and trying to follow the basic shape without being too precise. We're just something like so. I can tell I will need to refine things fairly soon here. This almost could come up maybe a little bit. We'll see. We can refine if we don't like it afterwards. Just doing my best and talking at the same time. kind of something like so. Again, you can see, it might be easier if I drew those ruffles. You'd be like, oh, now I can see what she's drawing. You can see it kind of goes like that, right? You can do what you want. If you prefer to draw the ruffles, if that's easier for you rather than doing it so boxy, you can do that. There's no reason you have to be as boxy. Sometimes it's helpful to just get that basic shape first, like I'm doing, a little more boxy looking, and then refining it after. But kind of something like this. So now let's refine a little bit. So the nice little ruffle here. And I am skipping all the little water droplets for today in the name of simplicity, because that's what I want to do. I feel like I've got some projects that have been a little more photorealistic, and this one I want to still have some realism, but I want to kind of veer a little bit into a little more loose, playful style today. Okay, something's not quite right here. I can see there's actually more of a space between these petals in the reference photo. Maybe I can move it up a bit, move this one. So I'm working on this top petal now. Kind of has an interesting way that it kind of goes like, it almost has a little bit of a droop here, and then it swings down. So there's definitely a curve. So I'm just going to lightly erase so that you can see more of the curve that I think you can kind of see there. Something like that. And then I'll kind of erase here, bring this in a little bit because I feel like something's not quite working here. And you can see back there part of the petal of this one. And you see a little gap as well. So like I say, not perfect, but I think pretty good. And then here we will have some dark areas. This is going to kind of come in front and overlap this one a little bit more. And this could come up a little bit higher, this petal here. And yeah, I think overall that's not too bad. This one in the middle really does look goofy, doesn't it? I think the overall shape is okay. It just maybe needs its little fine details and ruffles. Then it does kind of fold a little bit right here. And again, another little bit of a bump or a ruffle, and then just coming down like so. And some of these details will get worked out when we go to paint it. This one, I'm just going to bring it forwards a little bit more because I feel like it's just, that back one is standing out a little too much to me. I'll try that. This one, actually, we never dealt with the ruffles on it, did we? We'll do that quickly. Again, I feel like I'm just being pretty loose. I'm sure that when you're watching on the video, you can completely see where my mistakes are in my drawing process here. All right, so now for some leaves. I'm going to keep it simple, but I'm going to do the center stem about like that. And then I really do like the way this leaf behind here kind of comes like this. I'll just draw it right through the flower. I do like that right there. It kind of comes up into here. It's folded over, so we're just seeing half of it. And then of course it has some serration, but we can do the serration with our paintbrush later. So that's good enough for that one. We could even make it look like it just kind of comes right there. I kind of think I wish I would have come in a little bit. I want the petal to stick out a bit more in front of the leaf, so the leaf will come more like that. But of course we're not drawing the leaf, but ignore the way that I kind of had it. I don't like it lining up perfectly, and it was lined up perfectly, and I don't like that. So kind of like that. And we can refine that shape a little bit after. There's one over here. It's a rather unique looking leaf. Now, if you want to just draw your own leaf, you can. If you want to copy the photo, what I see is I'm going to do the front petal, or not the front petal, the front part of the leaf is folded. So it kind of does something like this, if you look at that. And then the fold is like this. So it's kind of like that. I feel like I could have a bigger bump than that. Kind of see the bump though, right? And then it kind of comes, you kind of see this shape like this. Do you see that? And then it kind of comes like this, something like that. Again, I keep looking at my reference photo to kind of guide me here, because these are really unique folds and I kind of like them. And I think, you know what, I might try and draw or paint the leaves, draw and paint the leaves the way I see them in the reference photo. Okay, this one, you can't quite see where it attaches. And you know what, I could come a little bit lower. I wonder if we want to make it come up a bit higher. I wonder about that. Make it just kind of come through here like this. Let's do that, because we're kind of running out of space, and we don't need to have it so low in the painting. As long as it doesn't line up too much with this one, we're fine. So let's come up like this. So I'm doing the front part of this. Again, it's folded over. You can see how I keep refining and changing my shapes as I go. That is kind of how I tend to draw, as I do tend to, you know, just kind of play with it and keep looking at the reference photo. And sometimes as you go, as pieces kind of start snapping together like a puzzle, you go, oh, I didn't quite draw that shape right. And you can refine as you go, right? And then of course I'm not doing every detail. The serrated leaves can come as part of the painting process, I think. But if you want to refine them right now, you can. You can just look at the reference photo and kind of go, okay, kind of comes like this. And you wouldn't even have to do a serration exactly where you see one. You just, you know, invent, you know, about how far apart each little serration is. And you can just do it that way. Might bend this a little more steep here. We'll see. I don't know. Do I like that? I think it's not too bad. And we could have one that's kind of back here. You can see in the reference whether there is a leaf back there. If we want a little bit more green or something, just so it doesn't look as blank, you can do that. And there are these tiny little, I don't know if what these even are on the hibiscus, if there's going to be more like little tiny shoots for leaves. But we could draw those onto the main stem since we see them. And I think that's all I'm going to do. If you want to add, you know, a tiny little leaf here or there, you can. And I'll just take this now and I will go ahead and transfer it to my watercolor paper. So what I do for tracing is I have my watercolor paper here. Then I take a piece of graphite transfer paper. And I do teach how to make this transfer paper on a different video. So I'll include a link to that if you want to learn how to make your own. So I just lay this dirty side down onto my watercolor paper, lay my flower on top, make sure I'm happy with where things are going to be lined up. This is just a random size watercolor piece of paper I've used today, but I'll make the outline such that you have options for sizes. I just kind of randomly just jumped in onto my paper and just drew whatever seemed to come. All right, so I'm going to tape it down, this little sandwich, so everything stays put. If you don't tape it down, I mean, if you work fast enough, you might be okay, but if your paper shifts at all, then you have to restart. So I always say tape it down just to be safe rather than sorry. And I will take a colored pencil, doesn't matter what color, and I'm going to trace it with a colored pencil. That way I can tell what I've traced or not. Not as important with something like this because there's fewer pieces, but still, it's helpful. So I'm just going to do that, and I'll speed the video up as I do this because it's pretty self-explanatory from here on as I trace, and then I will be back with you when I'm ready to start painting. As I'm tracing this, I decided to go ahead and just add a few more serrations as well to my leaves, just so that I have them there. Then when it's traced, I will lift my transfer paper off, and you can see the trace worked fairly well. If it's a bit dark for your taste, which I don't like it too dark because those dark lines will show through after the paint's been applied, you can just lightly lift it with a kneadable eraser. The other thing I like about a kneadable eraser is it's perfect for getting rid of any of the smudges, because tracing paper does leave smudges. If you have a light box, that's not an issue, but if you're tracing the way that I trace right now, it's important to get those smudges off as well. If any of your lines seem too light, you can always use a pencil and just lightly sketch them in. I feel like mine are actually not bad, except for the fact I do want you to see them in the camera, so I might make a few of them just a touch darker, just for the sake of visibility, but I definitely don't recommend that you go too dark with yours. And what I think I might do is, you have two options for this for painting. Is you could go ahead and do a bunch of little dots with masking fluid to mask this in so that you can paint it later. But not everyone has masking fluid, and because this shape is, you know, fairly compact, I wonder if we could just go ahead, lightly paint it yellow, and very, very light with this coat, because it will just remind us where this shape goes. Then we can go with a deeper yellow later. And like I say, if you want to play it safe and have your easiest option, masking fluid will be the easiest option, in the sense that if you put little dots of masking fluid where each of these tiny little pollen are on here, you could then later lift that off and paint it yellow, and you'll be able to just like freely go over everything with your pink paint. But like I say, not everyone has masking fluid, and it's a simple enough shape. I think we're gonna do it this way, just to keep things more accessible for everyone. So I have my watercolor paint here. This is my M-Gram watercolor paint, so it's semi-moist. And what I'm gonna be doing is just taking a fairly small brush. This is a number 6 round. This is a Simply Simmons. I like these because they're firm enough that they allow you to have a little more water control, and they're really inexpensive, which is nice. I have a piece of paper towel here as well that I can dab my brush off. So I'll just dab it off so it's not super wet, and I'll pick up a little bit of my yellow, taking it straight out of my palette. So it's very concentrated. It's like it's straight out of the tube, except it's, in my case, dirty because I just work that way. And just go ahead and just quickly, you know, do a bunch of these little yellow dots. I'm just like tapping my brush up and down, tapping it like this until I'm happy with the number of little yellow dots. And you can see there's a gap in here. You're going to see a little more pink. Don't want to put yellow there. So pay attention to where the little gap is in the yellow. As you come out to the outside, there's less little yellow dots. So just keep that in mind. That's all we're going to do for that. But like I say, masking fluid's another option. We'll just do our best to work around it because we're doing loose and playful. But if you do have masking fluid on hand, you might find it more loose and playful to just go ahead and get it on there. I might dab a little bit at the top so they're a little bit lighter. I can always add more yellow later. And my other colors that I will use today, I'm going to be using quinacridone Rose. This is also an M-Gram paint. I have some quinacridone Magenta, which is by Core. My palette's a little messy. The clean quinacridone Magenta is at the side here. So if I use it, I'll try and pick some of my paint up from over there. And eventually when I do the greens, I'll want some phthalo blue. And again, I use M-Gram. Most of my paints are M-Gram. You can use whatever brand you want, but for those who want to know what I'm using, that's the paint I usually use. Okay, so what I want to do now is just apply a light loose layer of watercolor, or sorry, not watercolor, just water to this. And that's gonna give me a little bit of a wet on wet, but this is what I'm gonna do a little different. I'm gonna have a little bit of fun with this. And I'm gonna use my brush. Let's see, maybe we'll use, you can use a Simply Simmons, but I might try an Artegria just because it's it holds a little bit more water and it's a little softer, but either option is fine. Maybe I'll use the number, I've got several here. Maybe I'll use the number 10. Like I say, use the brush that works for you. This is a softer brush. I'll be using a firmer brush to do the details. So let's just go ahead, and this is what I'm doing different. Instead of filling the whole shape in like I usually do, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna come a little bit around the edges of the shape like this. So I'm gonna come around the edge, but the other thing I'm gonna do is just do some water stripes almost through the center. So I haven't actually filled every single little nook and cranny. I'm gonna do this pretty quick. Just stripe it almost the way you see the direction of the creases and the folds in this flower. So if you look at the reference photo, you can see the way these are kind of moving like towards the outside of the petal, right? So I'm working pretty quickly. You could do a few petals at a time if you would rather. I'm leaving this one, I'll put a little water there. Anyways, you can do a few petals at a time if you want, or do what I'm doing and just try and work pretty quick and come around the whole flower and just drop the water in. It's hard to see where I've gone, right? Because everything's wet, but you'll see in a minute here. I'm not gonna worry about getting these little things pink for now. They can be pink, the little stigma. And we'll just go like so. Then I have my Simply Simmons brush, and I'm going to mix up some of this quinacridone Rose, just a little water and rose together at the side of my palette. If you want to use a bigger palette and mix a larger amount, you can. All I want to do is have a little bit of diluted quinacridone Rose here. And I'm just going to go over the whole thing and just kind of like do this, almost like stripes or something. So following the creases and the folds. But there'll be a few spots that I might end up with a little bit of white left, and that's what I'm kind of aiming for. If you don't like little white stripes through here, you could paint the whole thing just solid. You don't have to do the little, you know, back and forth that I did before. But I'm going to drop this in here, and again, just stroke it down in the direction of the creases and folds. We're going to get more details here in a little minute. This is just a really fun, loose way to kind of get a little texture at the very beginning. We can throw another layer on here for more texture later, but you can see everything's just moving around beautifully. This is our very initial wash. Okay, we're getting a little dry here and it's not working as well. So I'm gonna just dip into my water and just do it with the water because it's not working with just the paint. I'll do this, but I might have to throw a little more water on here to make it. Let's take that water brush again. So this is my number 10 again. I'm just gonna stroke a few strokes of water through it as well. And like I say, if you don't like the little sparkles of white, fill the whole thing up. I'm purposely leaving those little sparkles of white because it's adding texture without trying so hard. This is, like I say, kind of a little bit of a loose, realistic look. Okay, because that happened, it dried out already over there. Let's just proactively start throwing a little more water in. Like I say, you could do one petal at a time. The reason I wanted to do them all at once was because I want them to flow together in this layer. But there's no reason that you can't have them separated. You can see like this. Again, you notice how the creases and the folds in this petal are a little different because they're kind of curved over, kind of going like this, right? That's awkward how I'm moving my hand, but kind of like that. And so pay attention as you drop that in there. You maintain them. And like I say, you can see, left some white behind. I'm gonna come over here. Once again, so basically, the reason I'm doing this with the water is because it was drying faster than I could paint. So that first step obviously wasn't necessary because I couldn't keep up with the speed of the water anyway, or the speed of the drying. So I'm coming around the outside, right? And then I'm doing these little creases and folds, just keep it nice and splashy and playful. A little bit there. And finally, the last one. Just come in here, fill it in with some water. Do the same thing. And I'm gonna pay attention. There is a little bit more light on this petal up here, so I might not go as dark, but it's darker down here. So I'm gonna pay attention to that this time, and we will get more darks. We'll pay more attention to our lights and darks here in a minute when we go ahead and do more detail for like the background, or not the background, for the second layer. I'm talking so fast I can't even think, apparently. I can't speak clearly. It's okay. Put a little water here because I want it lighter. So more water, less paint. And then here I got a little bit of a bloom happening where it's already kind of goofy dry. So I'll just use a little water and just stroke that bloom out. And what you have as an option, if you found that a little bit overwhelming to go so quickly through the whole thing, is you could do this petal and then you could do, you know, like this petal and probably even this one. You could do these two maybe at the same time, then come back in and do those two when these three are dry. That allows you to like work a little bit slower without having them bleed into each other too much, like you saw happen right there. Had a little bloom, had to kind of clean it up because this one was drying at a weird stage by the time I touched against it with this. So if you want to work slower, just do one petal at a time. You could do like this and this, let it dry even, then come back in and do like say this and this, let them dry, and then do, you know, this one, or if this one lets you kind of touch that edge and this one's already dry. Basically, if you find the petals touching each other bother you, or it's blooming funny, take it one petal at a time, let it dry between whatever ones touch, and then it should be okay for you. But you could see how you can, you know, even though the water had already dried on me, I was able to add a little more water and still achieve that kind of sparkly effect and leave a little bit of white in my hibiscus petals. So now what I want to do is let it dry. I could, have a little pink on my brush, I could come in here and just kind of dot a little bit between these little stamen if I want to. Just a little bit of like jumping again, kind of almost to fill in the spaces that are around the little stamen. Be careful, I don't really want to touch the petal too much because of the state of dry that it is right now. Do this more in the center. You could do this as a second layer. Don't need to do it right now. I actually think I went a little further than I would have liked right there. Let's take a little tissue and blot a little bit in the middle. Okay, what I'm gonna do is let this dry thoroughly. See, I've got a little goofy thing here, so let's just tweak that, change the shape of this petal a smidgen. I'm gonna let everything dry, and I'll use the hair dryer to make the process faster. You can let it air dry, whatever you prefer, and then we'll come back and add some details to this. If you're enjoying today's video, I'd love to invite you to join my free newsletter. In it, you'll find creative inspiration, art tips, studio updates, as well as be the first to know about workshops and lessons. If that sounds like something you'd enjoy, you can sign up at the link in the description below. Now let's get back to painting. So for this next layer, I'm gonna want some deeper, darker pinks, which means I can just take almost like more concentrated pink out of my well. This is again, the quinacridone rose. However, I wanna also kind of get a little bit of purple going. I'm just gonna make a kind of a purpley color using the rose and the phthalo blue. It's not a perfect purple, but it's not bad. So I'm gonna take a little bit of the rose here. Decide, you know what, let's move this out of the way, and then I'll show you a quick little bit of color mixing here. I've got an empty well cleared out, so I'm going to take some rose, and some of you have mentioned you like to see my color mixing process, and this is also going to give you a little quick peek into that. Sometimes you might just want to use a purple if you have a good purple. So I've taken a tiny bit of the phthalo blue on my brush, and we're just going to see what color we get. I'm wanting a purple color, but do I like this? Let's see. Yeah, I think I'm okay with that color. That is with the quinacridone rose and phthalo blue. However, I'm going to show you if I use the quinacridone magenta, which is a little more on the purple side. I've got some phthalo blue kind of mixed into part of this. I'll show you what that looks like for kind of more of a rosy purple color, which we need for our shadows. A little more vibrant. So I'm going to go ahead and take my water and just layer it on here. And this time I'm going to kind of almost do the same thing I did before, but I may end up filling a little bit more of the spaces. I know I've left some streaks, but I can't promise you exactly where they are. Just kind of done the same idea. Wet the outside, kind of took some strokes down, and then what I'll do is I'm going to be working into these colors, and I might even take a little bit of the darker pink, or I should say just the straight quinacridone rose that we used at the beginning, but take some straight out of my palette where it's concentrated. And I'm going to take my brush, and you can either use the tip of your brush, or if your brush is getting a bit dull, you can always like form it a little bit so you can see it's one side looks really sharp, that side's flat. You can use the sharp side and just do a few details. You want this to be a little bit kind of damp as you do this. You don't want it to be soaking wet, and I don't think it will be. If you painted your water on kind of carefully and left some white spaces, you should be able to do these little creases and folds without too much trouble. They should more or less stay put for you. If it's blooming around a lot, it just means you need to let your paper dry just a few more seconds, or maybe even up to a minute. Depends on your climate. A lot of it has to do with climate. So I'm just coming in here and just doing some of these. I don't want to overdo. It's tempting to overdo, but I just want to put a few creases and folds just to kind of give it that look that we see in the photo. And yes, there's other colors coming. So I'll just come around and do that. And then I'll just soften them with, actually I'm going to soften them with my Simply Simmons. This is, once again, a nicer, firmer brush for detail. This is a number 8, but any size would probably work for this. I'm just softening the little creases and folds that seem a little bit too intense or too bold. Maybe I went overboard, so just soften that a little bit. But that way we have a little bit of detail and these creases and folds. You know what? Because I didn't go too wet with this shape, I think that I can carry on doing the side-by-side shapes. And then when I come in and do my shadows, I will have to skip. I feel like I'm dry enough. I can get away with this. So I'm just gonna do a little bit. This one doesn't even have too many creases and folds, you know that? I'm gonna put a little bit of water here. Working fairly dry. This brush has water, but it's not too much. I'm just gonna put a few creases and folds. This one doesn't really have as many in the reference, and so we're just gonna keep it simple. Again, I'm moving and swinging my arm in the direction, or my wrist in the direction of these little creases and folds. Then I use my water brush and just soften it where it needs a little softening. Just blend it out. So we're gonna do the same thing, like I say, because I'm working dry right now. This isn't super wet. This brush holds less water. I'm getting away with it. So you'll notice I use the Artegria round when I wanted a lot of water. When I want a little water, I use the Simply Simmons, which are synthetic, firmer brushes, and it allows me to easily get these details. So just move my water a little bit so I have a little more room for my wrist to do its thing. And come down a little ways, put a little bit of pink here. I see that beautiful pink color. Just stroke a little bit more down. Again, this is just for a little more detail. We want to be fairly simple, fairly loose, so don't want to overdo here. And once again, water brush to just soften things ever so slightly. As you can see, I'm moving pretty quickly through this because I'm wanting to keep it simple and I don't want to overthink, because you guys know I tend to go detailed sometimes. So this one is supposed to be less detail and just more loose, flowy, loose realism is what I'm going to call it, because we're still realistic, but we want it to be looser. And this one's interesting. The creases and folds kind of go a little bit different directions. A little bit of water, soften that area where it's looking a little goofy. A little bit more, and I will be coming in here with my purpley colors pretty soon. This is just to give us some of those creases and folds that we can see in the photo. And then soften with the clear water. So that's what the two brushes allow me to do. And this one, yes, it's going to not be too hard either, because all I'm doing right now is those simple details, and we're working on the drier side. And if you feel like you've got puddles, you can do this. Just kind of soak up a little bit of water with your brush and you should be good to go. So I'm going to do a few veins here, or creases and folds. Again, this gives it just a little more realism. Looking at the reference photo to see what direction I need to go. If you're getting little bloomy things happening at the ends of your strokes, it just means you're probably too wet. Like I say, I'm working surprisingly dry right now. Usually I tell people, oh, you're too dry, you need a little more water, but today I'm working quite dry. And I'm not worrying about what I do to these because they're going to get dark. The only thing I'm trying to avoid is painting my yellow stamen. We don't want to do that. So I think that's good. Yeah, I think this is okay. A little more there. Okay, that's good. Now let's see how we are for dryness here. Yeah, we are a bit damp still. So I think what I will do is give it a quick blast with the hairdryer just to get it drier, and then we'll come back in and add some of those shadows and maybe some of the darker details that we see in here. So we'll do that next. Now, you know what? You can see in my drawing that I kind of messed up a little bit right here. This petal should overlap this one a bit more, and I didn't do that. And it's hard to make it overlap there, so I'm just going to bring it up a little bit right there on this particular petal. I think it will still work right like that. You can tell I didn't get a perfect drawing, and that's okay. We're just going to go with it. And my outline will go with my painting, so you can follow along with me. And if you want to do your own drawing, you can get it more accurate to the photo, but I'm just going to do that just so that I can have this a little bit closer to the photo. And then I'm going to do this petal, and we're going to do the same thing we've been doing, only this time we're going to start applying a little bit of the purple color. We want to be really nice and light with this, with the color. And so I'm going to be a little more liberal with my water as I put it on here. And we're basically just doing the shadows, or the areas. If you look at the reference, you see there's like a purple undertone to them. That's what we're doing. So I'm going to move back into a softer brush. No reason you can't use a firmer brush. Just be a little more liberal with your water. So either way works. And I'm just going to look at the reference photo to see where I do see that purple kind of look in this petal. And I'm going to just do it. Just put some water there. And then I'm going to leave some of this dry, and I can kind of play with my water and my paint at the same time to get it exactly how I am wanting it, which isn't anything exacting because I want to be loose. So taking a little bit of this more purpley magenta color. So this one is the magenta and the phthalo blue together. So that's the one that we had here, a little more vibrant, and I'll come back into that maybe later. So we'll just start with this. Drop a little bit here. You can see it's very intense. Oof. I could have almost, if you want to water it down in your palette, you can, because you can see this super intense, and I'm going to guide it around with water. So if you would rather just make a really nice watery mixture in your palette, so it's a little less concentrated than mine, you could do that too. Just drop a little here, and again, you can see how concentrated I am. The Simply Simmons brush would work really well as your water brush here. I have the Artegria, but no reason you can't use the Simply Simmons to guide your paint around. Might even do that. It gives you a little bit more control because, like I say, holds less water. So if you're finding the water's getting away on you, use a firmer brush. So I'll just show you what I mean. You can see, and I'm just kind of getting that shadow shape on there. Do you see that shadow shape? Very light, very subtle, but it just adds that little something. And I'm going to come with the shadow color down towards the center of this, and we're going to get darker colors later. So right now you're thinking, it's not really purple down there, Jessica. No, it's not. That's okay. We're going to refine things. Just a second. I kind of messed up right there. It's okay. We'll deal with that later. Just going to put a little bit more of this purple color and something like that. Like I say, I don't want to overwork or overthink with this one. Put a little touch of the purple up here. You know what I'm going to do to make this less concentrated is take a little dip with my paintbrush. This is the one with the magenta on it, so it's a little more watery. I'll just put a little up there too. I feel like we have a little shadow up there that's pretty. So let's go ahead and move into this shape now. So we let this dry before we touch it. So this one could have quite a bit of that color. So I'm using the Simply Simmons. You can see, you can go back and forth between either brush. Doesn't really matter. Just applying some water, but I'm being more liberal than I did when I wanted to do those fine creases and folds. And I'm just going to come over everything with this magenta and put quite a bit on here. I'm stroking it in the direction of the creases and folds still, but I'm trying to kind of avoid like obliterating the little light spots that I had just because I liked them. And I'm just going to come around and do this entire petal. I'm going to not put so much back there because I don't see a lot of this purple color. Well, it's a little bit right here, the shadow. But that's I think the extent of what I'm going to do. Just want to keep it, again, more simple and a little bit less realistic than perfection. Okay, maybe like that. I think that's okay because I see a little bit of light along here. So that'll be good enough for our shadows. And this one isn't really touching too much, this one, so I'm going to go ahead and do this one too. It's just barely touching. And I'll just repeat the steps. So just put a little water on here. Maybe move it in the creases, the direction of the creases and folds so I can maintain those light spaces, right? Because I do like them. You don't have to keep them. I like the kind of the look that they gave, but some people don't like white spaces in their work, and that's okay. Just don't do white spaces. Okay, this one has a unique shadow, right? Like this. Do you see that shape? If you look at the reference photo, you can see a kind of a triangle shadow. It's soft, but it's triangular. And just a few, I'm going to make sure I'm happy with that. And then just do a few creases and folds to kind of radiate out from it, because you can see that magenta color does kind of flow down this direction without being quite as strong as that first shadow was. So just do a few of these strokes through here. Again, thinking creases and folds, but still maintaining that kind of triangle shadow right there. And I'll just soften these because these are a little bold to me. Put a few more maybe. This is kind of interesting. It's almost like they change directions. They're kind of moving this way downwards and then they kind of move this way upwards. So just notice that with this particular petal. And just a little bit more. Kind of not liking that too much. Okay, just a little more water here because I'm getting a bit drier than I want to be. And I'm going to call that good for that petal. So what I think I'm going to do is dry it, and then I can come and do these two petals, and then we'll work in our darkest shadows afterwards. So now we can go into here. I've gone ahead and dry things, so now the edges won't bleed together. So I can do this one. It's got quite a lot of purple, this one a little less so, but you can see, well, I'm calling it purple. We're calling the magenta purple just because it looks purple compared to the rose, but it's magenta. So let's try and call it magenta so I don't confuse you. Although it does have, like I said, my magenta does have a little blue in it. So yeah, we could call it purple. So again, either brush, take one of your round brushes and drop some color in here, or some water rather, in here. And this one is going to have a lot of the purpley color. So let's go ahead and do that. Dip into the magenta purple, and then I'm going to dip into my water because you know how concentrated I came out up here at the beginning, right here. I don't want to have it as strong right now. So, and I can see I've kind of definitely tweak things compared to the photo. And some of it really wasn't intentional. It was just in the effort to be fast and loose. Things have been a little less realistic, and I'm okay with that. Less water than I need. Let's get some more water on here. Get them flowing because things are kind of getting too dry. And that crunchy kind of look where it's just, that's just not the look I'm after. That was a really dry, detailed look. I'm not wanting dry details yet. I'm just wanting some flow with a little touch of detail. So I grabbed the softer brush, but any brush really would be okay just to get more water going. A little more of that color here. Guide it towards the center. And definitely along here. It could even be more purple, but you know what? We're going to keep it simple and just use the color we have. We're not going to add more blue, but if you want to add more blue right there, it could be a bluer purple if you wanted it to be. Not loving this petal. I don't mind how it looks, but when I compare it to the reference, I'm like, this is definitely some artistic license happening here. So just drop that a little bit more of that magenta, purple magenta, and put a little bit along this edge, maybe a little bit, because if you look at the reference, the one that's in front actually does have a darker edge. Quite often it can be the one behind with the darker edge, but I do see a slight darkness here. So I'm going to just, and it is a little bit more the rosy color in the reference, but that's okay. I just want to get some shadow kind of suggested there, or some darkness suggested. So again, just kind of just having fun with this and being a little more loose than maybe I would sometimes be. And then finally, actually, you know what? I'm going to just refine right here too. The edge is a little bit goofy the way I painted it earlier. The way I painted it. I can't talk. Being so loose, my tongue is not staying clear. Okay, how's that? That's better. Now, I'll just go ahead and paint this back one with water first. Like I say, I just am picking up these brushes rather interchangeably. I just have to be aware in this stage I'm after more water, whereas, as you know, that last layer for the detail was less water. But you can really make either brush do more or less water depending what you want it to do. You don't have to have a different brush for that. Okay, so there was just a little magenta on my brush there, which is fine. I don't want much of the magenta here. We just have to harmonize it with the rest of the flower. We don't have to put a lot of magenta into this, or purple color, right? Because it's really not very purple compared to the other ones. It has less shadow. There's no stark shadows on this reference photo. It's not a photo that's high contrast, but it had enough, I thought, color variety in here and light variety that I used it. And it's nice for something simple like this. Okay, so I'm just kind of looking at the photo and kind of just going, you know what? I put a little something here, a little something there, and we're going to call that good enough. You can always take a little more time to refine the outside edges of your petals if you want to. I'm just kind of going pretty quick along the edge there, but you can always, this I'm going to lift a little bit. I'm just going to scrub a little bit with the tip of my brush just to kind of refine that where I went over the edge earlier. Like so. And then right here it's darker. Let's see if we can put a bit of darkness. You know what? I'm going to even take a tiny, tiny little bit of our rose that we were using before. I could have done this in the layer when I was doing the details and I didn't, so I'm just going to do this now. Put a little bit of rose there just to show that's folded over. It's just a little extra, but it's pretty. So, okay. And then just keep an eye on it as it kind of dries because we don't want it to flow out too much. We want it to kind of have a bit of a firm edge. Okay. I think I'm happy with that for this layer. So when I've got this dry, then I'll come in and do, as you can see, we've got some really intense darks in the center. So we need to get those on, and then we can do the final details for our stamen and all of the rest. Great, so now we are going to do these very, very dark shapes in the center. And if you want them to have a soft edge, and some of them do need to have a soft edge, we're going to want to put a little bit of water onto the petals. We don't want a lot. This is where we're back to damp versus you know, the last layer I was a little wetter when I did the more purple color. For these dark colors, we want them to really kind of stay in their spot without having a hard edge. And so that's where using a firmer brush might help you have less water. But like I say, you can just dry your, if you have a softer brush, just dry it a little bit better. So I'm going to actually I'll just come in here quickly. I'll wet it. Again, direction of the creases and the folds, because I'm not getting perfect wetness here. And I'm actually going to do these two together, because if you look at that dark shape in the reference photo, it does touch, right, between the two of them. And you can't almost tell where those petals separate in the very, very middle there. So I put a bit of water, but not a super puddly mixture. And so right here, this is my mixture that I made of the quinacridone rose plus a touch of phthalo blue. And then of course I've got this one that was quinacridone magenta with a touch of phthalo blue. I'm probably using some of both, and if need be, I can also dip into my phthalo blue a little bit if I need to go darker with my shadow. So this is very concentrated here. Let's start with it. So this is the rose plus rose plus phthalo blue. So I'm going to come in here and drop this right in here where I see this dark shape. And now these two petals are dry, so we're going to get hard edges where those petals are, but we're going to get soft edges where our two petals that we just wet, where they are almost not soft enough. It's almost too dry. You might have to soften them a little bit with a water brush. And that's okay, because we can drag that color around a little bit. So I'm going to, again, bring those strokes down with my water until I gradually touch that and let it kind of just gently flow, gently kind of come up. So we're just gently streaking it, like almost like, again, those creases and folds can kind of start to happen. Put a little bit more of this to get that shape a little more accurate. And when you want to guide it this way with the water, just kind of do it, like swing it the same way as if you were doing a few more creases and folds in your hibiscus. So we'll do a little bit here too. We got more water. Let's put some water here first, right beside it, like so. And then we'll just kind of get our arm position in such a way that we can kind of swing a little bit with our strokes and just bring it this way just a little bit. Put a little more of that color, tap it in. And then if we can just swing it a little bit. See how that adds so much depth and dimension, just putting that little shape there. And if you feel like, you know what, it could be darker, that's where you could take a little bit of the magenta purple that we were using before, drop it just in the center. So like drop, like that, it'll get it a touch bit darker. I'm gonna be careful with this, because that shape, if it gets too wet, it'll move around too much. And you can kind of see it's almost, you know, the shape is changing a little bit compared to what the reference photo is, we'll put it that way. So I'm trying to just kind of let it do its thing, but also guide it so that I'm not too unhappy with it. And then over here, I think we can actually get away with doing this shape. It's almost like there's only two dark shapes. There's this dark shape and this one. And this is where I'm going to do a little bit of drawing. We're going to leave the center stem here. Anyways, we're going to leave this plain right now, or plain, unpainted. Now with this, I'm going to try and like loosely draw in this shape that I see here. It's not going to be perfect because my drawing isn't like, you know, perfectly whatever, copying the photo, but I'm going to go in here and do kind of the shape that I'm seeing for this shadow shape. So I'm just looking at the reference photo kind of to see approximately what that shadow shape looks like. Kind of like this. Now I don't have every like little extra crease, ruffle, everything in my petals. So I'm just gonna try and eyeball things. Now I went really dark with my pencil line. Let's lighten this up. We wanna see where that shape goes without having it like a coloring book. So we're gonna lighten these a bit. I'll go a bit darker so you can see at least a little better. A little bit better, but not too crazy. Something like that. Let's give that a try and see how that works. Maybe I'll paint it as two shapes so that it doesn't get too confusing, because I want this to be simple for everybody. So you know what? We're just gonna do this back one first. And we don't have to wet the whole petal because it's almost like this creates a break for us We could have a little bit of pink over there later, but we don't have to do that right now. So I'm just going to wet half the petal to keep it simple and come up to that line there and then come down. And I'm not going to wet this petal. So whoops, except that what I just did there with my finger, but okay. Just like that. So you'll see where the water is when I start dropping those colors in, because you're going to see where it's not going. So I'm going to drop into here, and we will extend that shape in a minute. So we're just going to go like that. And you can see that's about where that shadow is, right? It's kind of nice and dark right in there, but it's a nice hard edge where it comes up against here, because I did not wet this petal. So that's why it's a nice hard edge. And you can see I need to put a little more water and encourage it to flow just a little. Come on up here a little bit. Because you can see this shape does flow a little bit, right? I could even put a tiny, tiny tap of just the quinacridone rose from over here. So my palette is over here. I'm just taking a little quinacridone rose. I did not wash my brush, so we'll see what we get here. Put a little bit of it in this kind of in-between area, because I think we can have a little bit more of that reddish color. Just a little bit more, and then my water brush, and I'll blend it around. So make sure my water brush is fairly clean, and let it flow up a little bit. You can even do a little bit of this stroking, right? Almost create a few more creases and folds while we're at it. That'll just make it work better than just being all mush in this area. So I'll just go up a little bit. I think that's okay. I think that worked. And then while that's wet, I think we could even come down here, because where that line is, right? So I didn't wet anything now. Like this is dry still. Coming in, drawing in this little shape to create that part of the shadow there. And then this part does get soft, but I wonder if we can just leave it a little bit hard edged. Let's see, let's do this little part that kind of comes up a little bit like this into the other petal. See what we think of it like that. You know what we can do is just put a little bit of water and do a few little strokes like this. So I'm using my wet brush and I'm just stroking it a little bit. This is the trickiest part of the whole painting. What I might do next is, I'm wondering about stroking it a little bit down this way. This is taking artistic license. This isn't quite in the photo because I didn't do all the ruffles exactly the way they are in the photo, but I'm using my damp brush, just guiding this a little bit down there as well. I think that works okay. All right, so that was a simplified version of that complex center. And you know what, we can come a little bit further this way with that dark. And then once this is dry, we'll come and do this nice little stem thing here, or is that the pistil? We'll do that next. And you know what, well, everything is still on our brush. We could do this color. I think this color that we used is gonna work perfectly fine to do these 5 little dots. So let's do that. Let's go 5. I'm not worrying about the fact that they have like a white outline. I'm not worrying about that. I'm just gonna do these 5 little dots, like so. And then we'll use a lighter pink to kind of create the little stem up here, because it's only dark just in those dots. If you want them a little more vibrant, that actually could be, they could have a little more of a reddish color. That's almost too burgundy, isn't it? We could do a little bit of this dab and just wash my brush and get some of the quinacridone rose. A little bit more vibrant than the color I just had. I'll put that in there. Just make it a little bit more red there. I think that's better. Alrighty, so we'll let everything dry before we do the details there. We could take our rose color actually and do a little bit of this right in here. You can kind of see how it's like all these little branches coming out. So it's like you have your main stem and then you have all these little branches. So you can just take artistic license, kind of figure out how to paint those in there. Just make yourself these little tiny little things so they branch out into your little stamen here. Just kind of do that. Just create a few little branches, and you can see that kind of coming all the way down. And when you hit here, you could start painting it. I think I'm probably dry enough. I'm not going to do it all. I'll just paint a little bit of this more pinky color up here. And then in a minute, when I'm sure I'm dry enough, I'll come down and do down here. I can still see it's kind of wet. So I'm not sure if I'm quite wanting to do them. I could almost do them, but there's a chance that things will start messing and bleeding, and I don't want to have anything go goofy right now. So I'll just come like so with this stem, and I'll finish the details to that stem in a minute once it's fully dry. All right, so now we can go ahead and I've dried things. We can come in here and tweak things. I want to put a tiny bit more pink right down here. You can probably see that. And then you could decide if you want to intensify your shadows. I think, and then just to keep it simple, I probably will leave it more or less the way it is. But if you want to go darker in some places, you can. I'm going to start, you know what, just painting this with some water and then dropping in the quinacridone rose because I see a really, really reddish rose down here. And then we'll come and do that little part in a minute because I want to get this part finished up here, the place that I'm happier with it. Just a little bit of that color. You could even, at the base, you know what I could do? I could put a tiny, tiny bit of the color that's over here. But let me just let this flow around a little bit. Bring it up here a little bit. Okay, and then I'm going to just dip into this darker color that we used before. This is the quinacridone rose with the phthalo blue. I'm going to just put a little bit at the base here. You know what? While I'm at it, I can probably start putting a little bit on there. No, I don't want to do the whole stem yet because it'll bleed too much. So we're just going to do that. Yes, it looks like the stem's mushed into the background right now or into the rest of the flower. That's okay. It's going to be okay when I come in here. We'll get it refined, get this nice and dark in a quick minute. But while it's drying, what we can do is also put just a tiny bit of yellow, like deeper yellow, in some of these little spots. I didn't want to overdo it earlier, but we can put a little more now. So I'm going to put more yellow, and I might even take a little bit of an orangey color if I want it in some of these darker spots. But let's start with the brighter yellow. Just kind of tap it in here to create a few more little stamen or little pollen dots here. Kind of like that. And then we can go, okay, I have an orange color here. You can just mix a little orange if you want to into your yellow. And I'm going to do it on the ones that are further down here, like more in the shadow. So like down here, drop it on a few spots, wash my brush, dry my brush, and then I'll just blend it around a little bit, just so we get a little bit of like almost like a shadow color. I know it's not super orange in the reference, but I like that for a little bit of a shadow down here. You could use a different color if you want to, but I kind of like that golden look. I'll just dab a little bit more yellow, try and find that balance of yellow and the goldish color. It almost does look a bit greenish in the reference. If you want to do a greeny color, you could. You know what you could do? You know, I wonder if we should try the green. I'm going to just try it. This is experimenting. Usually not a great idea to experiment once you put some on there, but because it's still wet, I might as well show you what the green looks like, because why not? The green is, we have a lot of green on our background, so maybe we do want to have a little bit of harmony with the green and the yellow. We'll just see what it looks like. And dot a little green on here, and then I'm going to definitely come in with my yellow and kind of disperse that around, because way too green right now. Drop the yellow in on top of those. I don't know. What do we think? The green actually pops more than the orange. Maybe I do like the green. Starting to lose my little shapes a bit though, because I'm almost like overdoing it. But that works okay. You can do the color you prefer. And then I think, let's see. I think it's dry enough. I can do this now. Just be aware, you got to make sure you're dry enough or it will bleed. So I'm going to go ahead and do this little stamen thing. I'll just do this little stem. And I'm going to blend it out as it comes up. So up here it's more this pinky color, so I'm using my water brush to kind of just create that transition so that it's dark at the bottom and gets lighter at the top. And I'll just fill in that spot there. It is a little bit, if you notice in the photo, it's a little bit darker in a way on the left side, and there's almost like a very, very, very faint lightness on the right. You don't have to achieve that though if you don't want to, but you can kind of slightly see it. I'm just going to tweak this shape. I'm seeing a little bit of something that I'm not liking, the white line there, so I'm just going to tweak that as well. Just kind of do that and join those a little bit. It's actually not quite joined in the photo, but get rid of that white line. We lift a little bit there. This next step is totally optional. This is where if you want to push any of your shadows, you can, but don't do this if if you're happy, just leave it alone. I'm just noticing here, I could go darker with the shadow, so I'm putting a little water And then on my brush, I've got more of this reddish, kind of the reddish color. This is the red with the phthalo blue. I might put a little bit of that here just to create a little bit. You can kind of see in the reference, there's more of a shadow here. Let's go with the Simply Simmons brush to guide our water because it's flowing a lot. And this is starting to err almost on the side of too realistic maybe. So you can decide, do you want to just leave it with the looseness we've already achieved? I think it's beautiful. If you want to push your shadows, you can use a little water and a little bit of that paint and just kind of create a few loose, slightly darker shadows on here. Do a little bit here too. So I'm just going to put a little bit of water first to guide it around. So put a little water. I'm not touching the petals together. Just putting some water and then a little bit of this to be a shadow color. So again, this is the same rose with the phthalo blue. It just pushes the shadows a bit. And we can even bring it down, I think, in this case, all the way to our shadow right there, or to the center a little bit. That's kind of, like I say, optional, but I was seeing some darks there and I thought, I wonder if I should push them a bit. It's always a decision. You have to just make that call as you go. Are you wanting to push things enough? Does it bother you enough to take the time to kind of push things? Like right there, I put a little bit more of the red and blend it around. Again, totally optional. These extra little touches can really just be if you see spots that you're like, yeah, I might want to go a little darker, put a little pigment on there, blend it around. I'm going to do the same thing right here. Again, keep this in your mind. This is optional. Don't, if you're happy and you're not really up for taking any risks, just leave it as it is. If you want to push it, or sometimes I say, watch me. And if it works to, you know, when I push something and you're like, I like that, try it. But just wait till you've watched me and my shenanigans first. Yeah, I think that just those tiny little touches did add something. I could even put a little bit here to help define the difference between these two petals. So I'm just coming on, I'll put a little bit of water first. That'll help. And then just come in here and just do a little bit of something. It'll create a little separation between these two. And they have the separation because of the white there. You don't like that white? That's a perfect time to come in and fill it in with the dark and then just blend it out. And you push those petals apart without having the white line. I didn't mind the white line, but I know sometimes people prefer not having white lines in their work. And so that's one way you can get rid of them. If you happen to have a white line, just put a little dark and push those two petals separate from each other by having the back one a little darker than the light one, or a little darker than the front one. Another thing you can do is always, if you want to have a little more ruffle in this petal here where it kind of comes down, you could kind of lightly scrub out the area where it kind of looks like so. And then when that dries, we can kind of define that lower ruffle. If you like that, I'm not sure if I really do. I could even try just doing it right now where it's a little touch damp. I gave it a couple seconds to dry. Could come underneath of here if I wanted to. And just put a little bit of water and kind of blend that. I don't know if that was worth it or not, but you can get that little bit of that ruffle look that you can see in the reference. Again, nice, but not necessary. So there's just a few little tweaks. I'll just dab that a little bit and try it again with a little bit more of the red on my brush. Just a little bit more rose. See how that comes on here. Better to do that when it's dry, to be honest with you, but it's almost dry enough. I can get away with it because I dabbed it with the paper towel. Again, it's not perfect, but kind of gives the illusion of that having a ruffle. I think I might even put a tiny, tiny little bit of orange into here. After all, I feel like it just needs a little something to just make it a tiny bit darker. So just a few little taps of orange. Well, that brings us to the end of the hibiscus flower, but stay tuned because, as I said, next week we'll be painting the leaves, a simple loose background, as well as the optional splatters if you like those. In the meantime, I hope this tutorial has brought a little taste of God's beauty and peace into your everyday life, and that it's inspired you to continue enjoying your own creative journey. See you again soon. Bye.